This is the Stuff About Advertising podcast with me, Ashley Rutstein. We're here to have honest conversations about how the ad industry works, why campaigns turn out the way they do, and what's really going on behind the scenes. So let's get into it. Does anyone even know what speed of culture means anymore? You hear it everywhere. It's on every agency website, every pitch deck, plastered all over LinkedIn thought leadership. It's become this promise that everyone makes. We'll help your brand move at the speed of culture, be part of real-time conversation, stay relevant and active on social media. But what does that actually mean in practice? When I started working in social media in 2011, I hate to admit that year, but it was a completely different world. Brands were just starting to jump on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, but no one really knew what they were doing. We were all experimenting. It kind of felt like the Wild West. There were no rules, no best practices. It was just figure out how to get attention. And because of that, I saw two extremes with clients. Some gave us total freedom. Social was so new and foreign to them that they didn't really take it seriously. But then other clients responded to that unfamiliarity with a need for total control. They wanted 30-day content calendars with exact copy and creative. It was planned so far in advance, so reactionary posting wasn't really possible. Although reactionary stuff wasn't really huge until Oreo's famous dunk in the dark tweet during the 2013 Super Bowl blackout. After that, everything changed. Reactionary content became the norm, and social media management became an always-on role. And the industry has been chasing that model ever since. But social media platforms have changed so much over the years. New ones have popped up, some have gone away. Algorithms feel like they change every week. Just when you figure out a process that works, things change. Culture shifts, and you just have to constantly adapt. So when agencies promise to move at the quote-unquote speed of culture, I want to understand what that really means in an environment that is constantly changing. How do you stay nimble? How do you bring clients along for the ride? What does it really take to move at the pace culture moves when you're also trying to be strategic?
There's speed, and then there's speed with strategy.
Sometimes it pays off to show that little restraint and think about the bigger picture. Long-term strategy versus just short-term gain.
That's Stef Schmit and Josh Rangel from Ogilvy. Stef is Senior VP leading earned media work, and Josh is Senior Director of Social Strategy. Together, they're heading up something new from Ogilvy called Culture Current, which we'll talk more about later. Right away, Stef and Josh are touching on that tension in the industry, speed versus strategy. Because what tends to happen for a lot of brands is they get caught between those two extremes that I saw back in my day. Either they're planning everything weeks out, locked into approval processes that make it impossible to react to anything timely, or they don't really have a long-term strategy and just put out scattered responses to whatever happens to be trending that day. I think everyone agrees that neither extreme works, but there's real debate on where that happy medium actually is, especially when it comes to trends. Some people say you should only participate in bigger cultural movements and trends with staying power, things like book talk or get ready with me formats. Others say jumping on trends is fine as long as you find a strategic connection to your brand and put your own spin on it. Do something unique instead of what everyone else is doing. And then there's a third camp that says, let social be fun. Be part of the conversation. Show some personality. If people are talking about something and you can join in and get engagement, why overthink it? It's one post. It's not a billboard that's going to be up for an entire month. And I personally think all of these perspectives are valid. But this really came to a head with the recent Taylor Swift album announcement. When she first teased The Life of a Showgirl with a blurry teal and glittery orange album cover, brands came out of the woodwork with their own version of this new era's colors. Dunkin' added glitter to their already orange logo. United posted a picture of a plane flying across a sparkly orange sky. Crumble posted their cookie box on an orange background with The Life of a Crumble Girl. Repeat this same shtick across hundreds of brands, and you get the gist. The debate over how brands should participate in trends exploded all over LinkedIn because of this. The Substack Silence brand summarized it really well. They said, in those moments, it's worth asking, are we actually adding something relevant for our audience? Or are we just proving to ourselves and to our peers that we can post fast? In my opinion, this Taylor Swift moment was a little of both. It was one of those chaotic moments where a massive number of people around the world were all freaking out at the same time. So if you were going to participate, you needed to move fast and jump in on that conversation that was happening right now. And most brands weren't doing anything special. A lot of them had virtually no connection to Taylor Swift as a brand, but people working at those brands, they're probably fans, and they know people in their audience are fans too. So it's relevant in that way. But yeah, by the end of the day, I was pretty tired of seeing literally every brand in my feed doing some version of an orange glittery post. What was interesting though is that for a lot of those brands, those posts performed extremely well. Some were significantly better than their normal content.
I think it's just how you do it, right? So if you just go in and change your logo to orange, you're just jumping on with everybody else. But I mean, it's a positive thing. You're having fun, you're playing along. But to do something and take it and make it something different and make it something unique is what really drives conversation and leads conversation. So you're not adding, you're extending it. In fact, at some point, you're leading it.
Exactly. And, Ashley, I am, as somebody who spends way too much time on LinkedIn, admittedly, I see a lot of those conversations, and the Taylor Swift one was specifically one that I saw. And we were talking about internally with our team, like, should this particular client jump in on it? Admittedly, I was like, just because the logo is orange, just doesn't necessarily mean that's the right play. And there was other factors that led into us like not moving forward. But looking at some of the other brands that did it, it made sense. Like Canva, for example, when they did that, when they were like it was like the gradient of orange that was used in the actual announcement. Perfect. I'm never going to fault a brand or a social team for just jumping in and having fun. It's just like, ultimately, what is the end goal? Is it just to say we did this, or did it have some sort of impact?
So that's the question. Are you adding volume or are you adding value? Are you one of many brands doing the same shallow version of a trend? Or are you finding your brand's unique and strategic connection to what's happening? I think Taylor Swift is different because she's one of the most universally known artists in the world. And a surprise album announcement, yeah, the conversation was massive. So jumping on that particular trend makes sense even if your connection is thin. But for most trends, you do have to be more selective. Wait for the moments where you actually have something to say and then move. But that requires building process and infrastructure that most agencies and brands haven't figured out yet. You need to be able to move fast when it matters and be strategic about when to sit things out. That's where the real speed of culture work happens. So let's talk about content calendars for a second, because I think so many social media managers really rely on that because it gives them some sense of control. But like we were just talking about, it's not really possible to plan that far ahead anymore. And is that sort of evergreen content always the best approach? And so is the content calendar still alive? Is it dead? Should we throw it out? Is there still some sort of place for it? How do you guys look at planning like that?
Content calendars are not dead. I will say that. There is a purpose for content calendars, both from a social standpoint and just general kind of PR planning standpoint when looking at plotting news and things like that. But for social specifically, it's not dead. It's just you have to frame it differently. And I like to look at content calendars as an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? An improv show where you have an outline for what you want to do, but how you get there, the beats that go throughout the 30 days or what have you are going to change. And so you're going to have to adapt.
The improv analogy really hit for me. It captures that balance of structure and flexibility that you need. You know what beats you have to hit, what products you need to be featuring, any upcoming launches or certain buying seasons. But how you actually talk about those things can shift depending on what's happening in culture around you.
Yeah, I want to build on that too, because obviously content calendars are just as much a part of PR and traditional earned media as they are for social. And being a part of that always on conversation is important. We want our brands, we want our clients to be top of mind. But what's important is to be nimble and to flex. A content calendar shouldn't be the book, the law. It shouldn't be written in stone. I think that is just a way for us to have a drumbeat, for us to have a plan to always be talking. But that doesn't mean that is how we have to be talking. Because the idea is like, what are the holidays? Is the Met Gala coming up? Is that a place for me to have that conversation? Is it spring cleaning? That's the easy, table stakes for brands. But when you have something coming up like what's going on with Labubu, the 76ers are jumping on 6-7, things like that, right? Like there's little places for you to jump into the conversation and be funny and have fun and or become an expert on a topic.
In social, speed matters, but structure is important, right? We have to be able to go quickly, but you also have to have a plan and structure in place. Otherwise, it's just shooting from the hip.
So flexible content calendars are part of it, but they're not the whole answer, because the real challenge isn't just having room in your calendar to react. It's having a well thought out system for identifying what's worth reacting to, figuring out your response, getting client buy-in quickly, and actually making the thing before the moment passes. This is where most agencies and brands struggle. They say they want to move at the speed of culture, but they haven't built the systems to actually do that. Stef and Josh have been working on this problem with Culture Current, which is Ogilvy's answer to that challenge. They've built out a specific framework and process that makes this possible for their clients. And whether or not this exact approach works for everyone, I think it's worth walking through how they've structured it, because it shows what it actually takes to deliver on that speed of culture promise. Their framework breaks down into what they call the 4 S's: signal, sense, spark, and scale. And to be honest, when I first heard about this and I didn't know any of the details, I was like, isn't this just social listening? It made me think of the old days when my team would be pouring through Twitter feeds and Instagram hashtag searches looking for people posting about our clients. Then we'd respond, maybe do a little surprise and delight by sending them a coupon or some swag. But I know things have changed since then, technology especially, and Culture Current goes much deeper than that.
We break it down into 4 S's with signal, sense, spark, and scale. And the signal is where we start. And that is really the social listening aspect of it all, right? And we're not just listening for the brand name. And I'm not, this is table stakes now. We're not just listening for the brand name, but we're listening for the topics that are relevant to that for our particular clients. If you're a skincare brand, you're probably listening for moisturizer conversation. You're probably listening for lifestyle conversations. You're listening for those different topics. And so in the signal phase of it all, we're listening for those elements, those topics, those keywords that are relevant to the brand, not just the brand mentions or subtopics within that, but within the brand, but interest-based conversations, right?
So yeah, social listening has evolved quite a bit. With better technology, you're not just searching for people talking about your brand. You're looking for people talking about interests and topics that could relate to your brand in some way. So the signal part of Culture Current is about using that technology combined with a team of people who are genuinely tuned into culture and obsessed with staying in the know. Sense is where they make sense of everything they're pulling in and figure out which signals are actually worth acting on. This is where human judgment comes in. Discerning whether something is a shallow, fleeting trend or a genuine cultural shift or conversation that connects to the brand. Spark is about more than just putting up a post. They're crafting a story or a bigger moment that drives engagement and gets conversation going about the brand specifically, not just whatever trend they're tapping into. And then finally, scale is about amplifying whatever they've created, whether that's through media outreach or influencers or ongoing social content, making sure the brand's participation in the moment lasts longer than a moment. All of this makes perfect sense on paper, but it really requires having the process locked in and having clients who are willing to move through it quickly. So I asked Stef and Josh to walk me through an actual example of work they've done that moved through these 4S's.
Back earlier this year, back in February, we helped CeraVe launch their anti-dandruff shampoo and conditioner and product line. Really exciting launch. We actually collaborated with Anthony Davis, who at the time that we started working with him was a point guard on the Lakers. But as luck would have it, he actually was traded mid-season in the middle of our campaign and a week before we filmed to the Dallas Mavericks. This was actually considered one of the biggest, most upsetting trades in NBA history. So, how do we take this moment that many people find negative and make it into a positive? Not just for Anthony, because this poor man, had to uplift his family and move to a different city and go work for another team. But how do we take that and make it something positive for him as well as for CeraVe? So the signal for us was these shockwaves, this sense of concern that people were having. Everybody was talking about the fact that this trade was happening. Our sense was, CeraVe could embrace the AD news and turn it into something that would otherwise seem negative and make it into a positive. The spark, which we love, is we actually in real time we tapped the master of breaking news, Adrian Wojnarowski, otherwise known as the Woj, and he's actually the architect of NBA Twitter's pulse. He is known for dropping what people call the Woj Bomb, which is like breaking news, and actually he's the one who broke the news of Anthony Davis's trade when it happened. He was the first person to report on it on Twitter. So we engaged him, and to scale, we reactivated Adrian, who actually had since retired from ESPN. We had him come back and drop his signature Woj Bomb, announcing AD's role as head of CeraVe, mimicking the actual moment of the breaking news. So we transformed this challenge of this trade into an agile, relevant brand moment. And actually, the Twitter post or X post said, breaking, CeraVe is acquiring Anthony Davis as head of CeraVe, sources say. When the other one said, breaking, Anthony Davis is being traded from the Lakers to the Mavericks. I think the post in and of itself got over 2 million views and engagements on Adrian's X. And also we got some really outstanding media coverage out of it as well.
What's really interesting about this example in particular is that they didn't post this immediately. They waited a few days to assess the risk of associating with this shocking and somewhat controversial trade.
We actually were very strategic, and when we announced it, we did it the day that he had his first press conference for the Mavericks. So we timed it to that. And it was on a Saturday, which is a day I think when even me as a publicist, I'm like, news on a Saturday. Who am I going to pitch? But it worked out really well. I mean, everybody saw it. People are obviously paying attention, and people in NBA culture are like Twitter fanatics. Like that is just like a social culture unlike any other.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of brands would want to jump on that as quickly as possible and get a post out that day or the next day. So it's interesting to hear that you could sit on it for a minute and still align it with a relevant point like the press conference and still be timely and part of that conversation while also thinking through the strategy of it all.
I think you have to weigh the risk of, if you get something out real fast, are you thinking it through?
That's what makes having a framework so important, because then it becomes less about posting faster than anyone else and more about posting as fast as you need to, as fast as your specific brand or situation requires. Posting with the strategy that actually matters for you. And one more quick example for you, and it does involve Taylor Swift. I know, you are probably tired of hearing about her, but this is a really good example of a brand having a strong and unique connection to the conversation. So in February 2024, Taylor was performing in Tokyo for her Eras tour, and her then boyfriend, Travis Kelce, was scheduled to play in the Super Bowl the next day in Vegas. The internet was spiraling, trying to figure out if it was even possible for her to make it back in time to see him play. Every news outlet was running the math on flight times and time zones.
One of our great case studies here at Ogilvy was the Embassy of Japan back last year. And our team saw it and they were like, hey, this could be a really funny opportunity for us and authentic opportunity for us as the Embassy of Japan, as the people who understand tourism and travel to and from the countries, that we could actually have a piece of this conversation authentically. Let's just make it a press release. Make it a press release. We'll post it on X. It'll make it look real official. It's got the seal of approval. And we'll just say, don't worry, take it from us, the experts over here. We promise you that she will make it to the game on time.
They posted it as an official looking government press release, assuring everyone that yes, Taylor Swift would make her flight. And they even included some classic Taylor Swift Easter eggs with song titles, saying things like, the embassy can confidently speak now to say that if she departs Tokyo in the evening after her concert, she should comfortably arrive in Las Vegas before the Super Bowl begins. And anyone concerned can be fearless in knowing that this talented performer can wow Japanese audiences and still make it to Las Vegas to support the Chiefs when they take the field for the Super Bowl wearing red. This was a smart move because they were able to have some fun and add something genuinely valuable to the conversation. As the actual authority on travel between Japan and the US, they had a legitimate reason to get involved. And they were able to do all of that in a matter of 2 days because they had the process in place and the clients understood the need for speed.
Well, it's really about trust. I think that's the most important thing. And it's really about just having an open line of communication. WhatsApp, very important. Texts, just go and be fast about it.
The trust is the first thing. And then buy-in, 100% buy-in, that the client, there has to be that expectation that, hey, when we flag this is process. This means we have to move, and we have to have that buy-in from, social teams, PR teams, leadership, to move fast, to have that process in place. And most clients, I think, that are even interested in this know and understand that.
What's great about having a framework like this is that flexibility is built in. As platforms and technology evolve, the specific tactics will probably change. What you post, where you post it, how you create it even. But that foundational process will always work. Identify what matters, evaluate if you belong there, and move strategically. That's your anchor when everything else is constantly shifting.
I think there's three things from where social is going. I don't think you can mention social without mentioning AI at this point. There is so much. AI is here. It is not going anywhere. Truly, social media teams are going to have to understand how to prompt, understand how to adapt with it, use it for visuals, for copy, for what have you. I also think, so while you're looking forward, I also think social is taking a step back in some sense of, like, we got to a point where we're over polished, too much video. I think you're probably going to see a point where we go back to a little bit of old school social photos, very much lo-fi, simple text only stuff. I think you're going to start to see that because of the so much stimulus that people get. I think we might want to go back. Might see a little bit of that. And I think the third thing for me, which is already a thing, but I think you're seeing more of it, is niche. Going subculture, people going into subreddits to just have that conversation versus being more outward and public facing. So you're already seeing that with people spending more times in DMs, sharing more to stories, and really getting involved in communities like Reddit and Discord.
So AI, lo-fi content, and niche communities. And I think all three of these point to the same underlying shift. People are craving something much more intentional and less manufactured. With AI, brands are going to need to be really careful about how they use it. We're already seeing backlash when AI content is bad or feels lazy. But I think there's also going to be increased value in showing the other side when something was made by humans, making it clear that effort and human ingenuity went into it. That's going to be something that people actively seek out. And I'm super on board for brands learning more about niche communities. I have always been a fan of getting super specific about who you're talking to. I think we're going to see brands find the communities that they actually fit into and go all in on those, instead of trying to go viral and please everyone. It's about knowing who your core consumer is and focusing there. Not broadcasting to millions, but connecting with the people who actually care. Maybe we'll even see less focus on vanity metrics because of that. I think most people know what it takes to succeed on social. The real question is how many brands and clients are willing to do it, to give up a million layers of approval, stay nimble, and trust the people they hired. The brands who get it, get it. They're the ones seeking out approaches like Culture Current. But the rest, they're going to keep saying they want to move at the speed of culture, while their competitors leave them behind. Thank you so much to Stef and Josh and the Ogilvy team. If you want to learn more about Culture Current, you can reach out to culturecurrent@ogilvy.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving an offering to the podcast algorithm gods in the form of a rating and review. And make sure you're subscribed for more stuff about advertising.